Good morning, everybody. Good greetings from Brussels. Thank you also on behalf of REGIO and myself for organizing this seminar and this conference, and where we can also give a bit more our input to the discussion on how to plan the maritime programs for the next program period. I will go into my presentation. I will give a very short introduction about where we stand with the regulations and the negotiations, and then I will go policy objective by policy objective and try to establish the links to the maritime dimension and conclude with a few key takeaways. Well, the first part, as I said, I will keep very short. You know that the ambition of cohesion policy after 21 is to have a stronger strategic focus. And the main challenge, as it is for all EU financial instruments, is to have a focus. We should contribute to the transition to a smart and low carbon economy. This twin transition is the ambition that all financial instruments within the Commission should contribute to this. As you know, we will have less policy objectives and they will be stronger linked to the European semester. Concentration, well, there will be unfortunately less budget available for the structural funds, but also less budget for Interreg, which means from our point of view that we have to focus stronger on certain themes to generate really impact. We have to make clear choices. And in order to measure the impact, we have to focus more on making the programs and projects even more measurable. So we have been working more on the indicators, and we have now also a specific set of Interreg indicators. And finally, the regulation we introduced in several places, simplification measures and more flexibility, also in order to respond to unexpected events or crises like the financial crisis and now the COVID crisis. Next slide, please. Well, this one, you know, I don't have to repeat. The 5 policy objectives we have for cohesion policy, plus the 2 ones for Interreg, better cooperation, governance, and a safer and more secure Europe. And maritime elements can be supported under each of those policy objectives. The state of the negotiations on Interreg. Thank you. Next slide. Well, the negotiations on Interreg are, I think, of all the regulations, are most advanced. So the major part has now been provisionally agreed, and the last trilogue meeting between the co-legislators will take place on the 30th of November, and then hopefully we have a final regulation for Interreg. The budget, well, also the budget has been agreed between Parliament and the Council, but of course we have now the political situation with Poland, Hungary, and Slovenia, so we still have to wait for that confirmation for a solution. But the budget agreed for Interreg is 7.95 billion euros, and here you can see also how the money is spread and allocated across the different strands. The member states have received, I think it was last week, the letters with their financial envelopes for the structural funds, including also for Interreg and also the allocation for Strand A and Strand B. With the agreement, also the methodology for the allocation per member state was automatically agreed. Well, the key changes to the Commission proposal, the most important, of course, is that our proposal was to have a more integrated strategies for sea basins, so where the cross-border maritime programs and the transnational maritime programs will be integrated into one program, and where the different aspects and elements could be supported. This has not been accepted neither by the Council nor by the Parliament, so we still continue as we have the situation right now, with separate cross-border maritime programs under Strand A and transnational programs, which from our point of view, and that will be one of the challenges, requires stronger coordination. Co-financing rate is set at 80%. Our proposal was 70%. Parliament is still reflecting, pushing for 85%, but most probably it will stay 80%. Financial management, we have N+3 instead of N+2, so which gives a bit more flexibility for absorption. Thematic concentration, well, I say concentration to be honest, but the outcome is that now at least 60% of the budget should go to 4 policy objectives. Well, honestly, from my point of view, this is not really concentration anymore, but this is what's now in the regulation. But what's most important is that for the land border programs, PO2 and PO4 will be obligatory, whereas for the maritime land border programs, only PO2 will be obligatory, as for the other strands, also for the transnational programs. And also the Interreg specific objectives, those 2 specific objectives for Interreg, they will be voluntary, not obligatory, as was our original proposal. And there's still discussion going on about the ceilings right now. The current proposal is that it should be up to 10% for ISO 1 and up to 5% for ISO 2. And then finally also, but I won't go too much in detail, the regulations for the small project fund, there's a general trend for more flexibility built in the regulation compared to the original proposal from the Commission. So let's go now to the core of my presentation, the specific objectives and the potential areas for maritime cooperation and investment. And just the disclaimer, well, the negotiations are still ongoing. Specific objectives under each policy objective are formulated in the ERDF and Cohesion Fund regulation, and that's still under discussion. Progress is not there yet as far as under Interreg, but still a lot of those specific objective agreements have already been reached. So maybe starting with the first one, policy objective 1. Well, we have 4 specific objectives here, dealing mainly with research and innovation, technologies, digitization, support to SMEs, and developing skills for smart specialization and entrepreneurship. And here, of course, the clear link is with the blue economy. So this is clearly the policy objective where a lot of the elements of blue economy can be supported. So supported cooperation in innovation in the blue economy. Isabel mentioned already that cooperation under Interreg is clearly one of the added values we could bring in with our programs. And here experience and sharing of experience between member states and regions could be very useful. Also cluster development to create, sorry, not too fast. Also cluster development to reach critical mass on cooperation in different areas, especially also, for example, around ports, is an important element of the blue economy and also to attract further private investors. When we speak about technologies, it's important not only to look at the more traditional ones or sectors, sorry, not technologies, but in sectors, like tourism, like transport and fisheries. Here it's important to further diversify to stay competitive, but also on the other hand to focus on emerging technologies like blue biotechnologies, new technologies for ocean observation and monitoring, and also on marine renewable energy, the technologies. So again, the contribution to the Green Deal will be very important. Yeah, so I think this is a very important, I would say, the key policy objective where the Interreg programs could contribute to the priorities of blue economy. Next slide, please. And policy objective 2, the one which is obligatory for all maritime programs, whether it's cross-border or transnational. Here we have 7 policy objectives, of which the first 3 ones focus on energy. Then we have specific objectives linked to climate change, water, circular economy, and biodiversity. Well, here again, the contribution of Interreg programs to marine renewable energy could be very relevant to cooperation on, for example, offshore wind production or tidal wave energy production is an important area where Europe should develop and keep its technological leadership. Fighting pollution, of course, of the seas is a key issue, especially plastic is a major problem. Plastic, again, can be collected and recycled, and where new products can be developed, where, again, programs can contribute to the blue circular economy. But here it's also important to keep in mind pollution of the sea is, of course, not only directly in the sea, but it comes very often from the land. So also the land connection has to be taken into account. So water sewage treatment further inland is, for example, an important area. Climate adaptation and risk prevention. Well, maritime regions are confronted with storms, floods, coastal erosion. And again, solutions cannot be found individually, but cooperation is a key element to attack those climate challenges and also to work together on risk prevention. Circular economy I already shortly mentioned. So the collection of materials offers also the possibility to develop new products and new sectors of the blue economy, and where again opportunities can be used. And finally, the protection, of course, of biodiversity and marine habitat conservation have been traditionally important elements under our programs and should also continue to be, just like coastal management. So that's under policy objective 2. Policy objective 3, Here we have 4 specific objectives. The first one linked to digitalization, and the 3 other ones linked to transport, TEN-T, access to TEN-T, and more multimodal urban mobility. Where here, of course, the key issue for Interreg programs would be contribute to ensure a safe maritime connectivity, and also to support, for example, green shipping, working on clean fuels and innovative technologies to make marine transport less polluting. The TEN-T motorways of the sea, while the Interreg programs have, of course, limited budget, but they can contribute here very often to more preparatory works, and also further to promote the green transport and digital connectivity will be an area of support for under this policy objective. For the rest, we can think also about, to make it more concrete, about, for example, more development of data sharing on marine traffic, maritime traffic, and also the cooperation, for example, between ports could be, and then especially the transport connections could be important topics to be supported under policy objective 3. Policy objective 4. Here we have a long list of specific objectives, 5, which are dealing, for example, with social infrastructure, with education, training, and lifelong learning, with integration of marginalized communities, healthcare, and the last one, the new one, which has been added, the role of culture and tourism, sustainable tourism. It might seem a little bit of an odd one under this policy objective. It was mainly added because the tourism sector was one of the sectors most hit, of course, is being hit by the COVID crisis, and has a lot of, well, leads to a lot of unemployment, and that's why it has been added under this specific policy objective 4. So the discussion at the moment is still going on internally. If projects supported under this specific objective should clearly focus on that element, so job creation in the tourism sector, or if it can be interpreted in a wider sense that also, for example, more infrastructure investments could be covered. So that's still an element to be discussed. On the other areas, for example, topics which link to maritime development is the promotion of blue skills. So not only which is a basic, blue skills is the basis for supporting the blue economy. So where first of all more education opportunities should be offered, and then also to promote the attractiveness of careers in the blue economy. Besides those 5 policy objectives, but I think you're very much aware of this, these are very much ERDF related, but under Interreg, we can also support all the specific objectives under the ESF Plus regulation. So in fact, we can cover the whole scala of ERDF and ESF specific objectives. Then policy objective 5. 2 specific objectives, the one more focus on urban areas, the first one. The second one more focusing on, well, the other regions where specifically rural and also coastal areas are mentioned, and where a more community-led local development bottom-up approach is being supported. Here, the link with maritime cooperation is that it's very much this bottom-up approach, local development, involvement of local communities can be supported. I think the screen is bit, okay, good. The link to maritime cooperation is first of all and it's a term which we took over from DG Mare, to promote ocean and sea literacy. It's much more to raise public awareness and build local commitments to actions around maritime cooperation. Again, so very much this bottom-up approach. And of course, also here, even before this specific objective for tourism was added under policy objective 4, also here, local blue cultural heritage and sustainable tourism can be supported, but the key element of policy objective 5 is that we need to have a territorial strategy at sub-regional level. So and it needs to be an integrated strategy, so not one sector, not focusing on one sector, but multi-sectoral. You need to have a kind of a steering committee which can decide on projects individually, so it's delegated to a steering committee. And the key element is this bottom-up approach, so the local stakeholders should be clearly involved from the very beginning. And finally, the specific objective for better cooperation governance. Here we have 6 actions, which are mentioned as actions in the regulation, but from our point of view, and also when you look at the template of the program, they should be treated as specific objectives. So just a kind of a menu indeed where you can choose from. Well, this is a very important specific objective for us, for DG REGIO, also specifically for our unit, because on the basis of the cross-border review we did in 2015 and the communication in 2017 on boosting the potential of border regions, one clear conclusion came out of that: we should, besides the direct funding into projects, we also should look much more into the, I would not call it soft measures, but to work on more on the institutional, legal and administrative bottlenecks to really exploit better the potential of border regions. So really the concept of going also look what we can do beyond funding, direct funding is important. And ISO 1 can support activities linked to that. So topics which could be supported here are, for example, activities linked to spatial planning and coastal management, coastal communities development, for example, via specific people-to-people projects, to work better on development of better data, specifically cross-border maritime data, and to work also on legal and institutional obstacles. For example, the activities we support under the B solutions, concrete legal obstacles which hamper cooperation, how can we solve them at a very practical, hands-on level? And we believe that this type of activities can also contribute to more structural change and really improve the governance in border regions in general, but also therefore also in maritime border regions. Then the conclusions, the key takeaways. Can I have the next slide? Yeah. So the first one, obviously a bit of an open door, but maritime territories, like any territory, should reflect clearly on their needs and build a solid intervention logic, and clearly also prioritize their needs and what are the most important needs to focus on. Well, as I said already in introduction, we require a stronger strategic focus, which for us means that the maritime program should build a clear link to the priorities in the sea basin strategies and the macro-regional strategies, which have a sea component, because we believe that they offer the strategic contextual framework. Third comment is that since we continue with separate maritime cross-border programs and transnational programs, maritime programs, we believe there's a stronger coordination required than before, especially if those programs select the same specific objectives in their programs. So coordination is important, crucial, not only during the implementation of the programs, but also during the programming. And we're working also now with Interact on this, for example, in the Mediterranean area and Adriatic Ionian, and also in the Baltic Sea. And what we observe there is that actually context exists between cross-border programs within such a sea basin, but the context between cross-border programs and transnational programs are rather more ad hoc. They are there, but there's not a really structural exchange of how this is, how activities can be better programmed and can be complementary to each other. So I think that would be something we really would like to see further strengthened in the next program period. We are aware of the challenges because programs are in different stages of programming. So some have already selected their specific objectives, others are still at the very early planning, so which makes this coordination more difficult. And another challenge is, should we coordinate it on everything and nothing, all programs on all the topics, or could you select a few topics where you clearly see that this coordination is crucial and where well, further cooperation is necessary, so that you go more for an in-depth coordination. So and that doesn't necessarily have to involve every time all the programs, but you focus a bit more on specific topics which are in the key interest of those programs. And then the last slide, please. Well, for the next program period, as already said, and I hope I clarified it during the presentation, maritime cooperation can be financed under all the policy objectives, but nevertheless, policy objective 2, which is obligatory, but also policy objective 1 with a clear link to the blue economy, lend themselves particularly well. Improving governance, the specific objective for better cooperation governance. We believe it's especially important for the reduction of obstacles, and we think it's a long-term structural investment, and we invite the programs to reflect on this. And final point is that when we speak about maritime cooperation, we should not forget about the hinterland. The importance of the hinterland investments there is also crucial for maritime cooperation, like connectivity, accessibility. Ferries connections can be developed if you don't have the land connections via rail or buses or via roads, you're still nowhere. And also investments in wastewater treatment inland, of course, help also to reduce the pollution in the sea. So we should not forget about this land-sea interactions and the importance of the hinterland. That's all from my side as an introduction, and thank you very much for your attention. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you very much.